Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today we have a true legend. Tro, welcome, man. Good to, man. It's been a long time. We've been so busy trying to get our practices up and running and doing all this crazy stuff. Tro, how you doing, man?
Very excited today. Somebody who's walked the journey, has been a advocate for low carb dieting and fasting, somebody who's been through the journey himself, and somebody who's reached a lot of people, an author, presenter. Very, very happy to have Jimmy Moore here on today.
Yeah, Jimmy, welcome. I mean, a lot of mornings I go out for walks and I listen to Jimmy. Whatever you were doing, like fasting, low carb, keto, everything in your book. I mean, books, plural. And so you've done so much in the community and everyone knows you. And we wanted to welcome you. And we wanted, for people who've been under a rock somewhere, want to hear your journey and your story and what you're doing now.
Hey guys, and I'm sorry you have to listen to my voice early in the morning, but it is what it is. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I am a big fan of what you guys are doing. When I saw the Low Carb MD podcast pop up on Apple Podcasts, I was like, who in the world is this? And then I saw it was Brian. I didn't know you, Dr. Tro, but wow, you guys are doing a really great job. And I love it when I see medical professionals stepping out, because I know you take a lot of risk when you start talking on a podcast because you're under a lot of scrutiny. And because I don't have any of those credentials behind my name, I can pretty much say whatever I want. Now, I'm not flippant about it. I try to be responsible with the information I share, but I'm at more of ease to do that than you guys are. So mad respect and props to you guys.
Yeah, our lawyers are going crazy. My wife's a lawyer. She's like, you sure you want to do this?
Right.
So
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I think we see a calling, and you had a calling after your struggles with weight and trying to figure out your path forward. And you've been a trailblazer for a lot of other people struggling. I think you're a huge beacon of hope, and you've been out there. You've taken criticism for this stuff. You've been through the fire way more than we have, right? And it's amazing that you're still standing and that you keep plugging forward and that you haven't just said, forget it, man, I'm done with this and move on, right?
You know what drives me? Unlike a lot of people that get into the health space, I think a lot of people come into the health space with all the best intentions in the world. They want to take on the world. They want to share this message that has been so life-changing and profound in their own life. And then somehow, some way, they become jaded by the money opportunities that are out there and by some other distractions that then they kind of lose their eye. They take their eye off the ball, so to speak, and they don't get back to the core message. And one thing that has always grounded me is my connection with people. And I always try to keep the focus on people, even if it goes against the grain, all pun intended, of what I maybe could do to monetize better. That's not of interest to me. Now, I've been very successful selling books, as you guys mentioned, and some of the work that I've done. But for me, it's not resting on the laurels of my success, but rather using that success to propel me forward to continue to educate. It's always been about how can I educate more and more and more.
And I think you're probably getting the same rewards. Like people reach out to you, say, Jimmy, thank you. One day I was about to end it all, or I was giving up, or I was going to do drastic things. And I listened to your podcast and you helped me.
Yeah, I get those pretty much on a daily basis. In fact, one lady on Instagram just last night wrote, wow, like in this hate-filled world we're living in right now, it is so good to have a smiling face that's positive, that's always uplifting and giving good information in the process. And I think at the end of the day, that's what people want to connect with, is positivity, someone that looks like they really care and authentic. This is what's missing, not just in the low carb carnivore space, but in life in general right now. people just don't know what's real anymore. And so if you present yourself as a real person, real struggles, still working on things, they connect with that so much more than, oh, look at me, I figured everything out and you should follow me. And yeah, nobody connects with that.
Yeah, and that's what I've always respected about you. You've shared your struggles. You gain some weight, you lose weight, you've yo-yoed like we all do, and you share it publicly, and you do, and you say, okay, here's what I learned. We're learning. I'm on a learning experience too, and Tro, and we've been on this saying, okay, and no one has more experience than you of trying all this stuff, and that's the thing that the three of us have in common. Is of course, when I started doing this, I'm like, I'm not the right messenger for this. I'm not a Ted Naiman six-pack ab guy. I'm still in the struggle myself. So it's one of those things that you've been that beacon of saying, okay, I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to try this for a while. Let me try this. And you've refined yourself over time. And that's what I'm hoping we could all do. So tell us about that too.
You know what I've found over the years is I find people connect with my work. And the reason I've had longevity, which was what you alluded to earlier, wow, you've been in this space a long time. The reason I have that longevity is when people see Jimmy Moore, they're like, wow, he's just like me. Even though I've gotten the name recognition and all the things you talked about, at the end of the day, they relate to me. I'm one of them. And I don't think, nothing against Ted Naiman or Sean Baker or any of these others that have the buff bodies. Go for it if you can get that way. But I think you need to realize people want to connect with people that look like them. And if you see someone that's still kind of dealing with some weight issues, maybe having some childhood trauma issues, oh, wow, that's me too. I didn't realize that that could impact your weight. Well, yeah, let me tell you about it. And so you kind of have these conversations in an open forum, and people don't feel so isolated and alone and like they're the only ones going through things. I think that's the magic of why I've been able to stick around so long.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. People want an authentic message, and that's something. I mean, look, the social media space is terrible, and you hear people say, things like, "Oh, that person gained weight or lost weight," and it makes me think, and people are cruel about it. People are cruel about it. Like, look what fasting did. Look what fasting did to him. Look what low carb did to him. Like he lost 1 million pounds and then gained back 20. So I'm 6 years in and I'm still struggling. I still struggle every day. I share those struggles. Can you tell me just a little bit about your struggles? So forget about all the books. You're an author. You're accomplished. I want to hear about Jimmy Moore, the person. How has Jimmy Moore evolved, in terms of his relationship with food? And, what has he learned over the time? And what is he still struggling with now? Now more than ever, people are struggling.
That is so loaded. And of course, the era of COVID-19 has changed a lot of things. And I want to tell some stories about that here in a minute. But just the broad question of what you're asking here is important. Because I started this journey way back in 2004. And so I went on the Atkins Diet on January 1st, did the whole New Year's resolution thing. It was started as a weight loss journey. It was 410 pounds. Like, I desperately needed to get off what I like to refer to as crappy garbage. And I didn't know how, and I didn't know what I could do. And I didn't know how I would live without my 16 cans of Coca-Cola that I used to eat a day or drink a day. And then those whole boxes of Little Debbie snack cakes I would eat every single day, and then have Taco Bell and you name it. I was the junk food junkie. In fact, I ran the numbers one time, you guys. I was upwards of 1,600 grams of carbohydrate a day back in my heyday. And so no wonder I got to weigh 400 pounds. Miraculously, I never became a type 2 diabetic, although obviously insulin resistance was hard at play at that point. And I've fought my way back ever since then. But yeah, for me, it started off as a weight loss journey, lost weight, obviously started blogging and then podcasting a year after that. And life happens, like in the midst of, like, when you lose weight, people think, okay, you've arrived. And then you gain back weight and you're going, wait a minute, like, how did that happen? You don't really change anything, but then you look at circumstances in life. 2008, I lost my brother Kevin, 41 years old, to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, morbid obesity. And that was pretty hard on me. It wasn't like everybody assumes you get into this kind of deep darkness about a death like that. Oh, you must have, pile drived all these donuts into your mouth. I'm like, no, I didn't change anything. And this is the missing conversation piece with all the people that are very critical of people like myself. Well, you still have weight on the body. You don't need to be talking about health. You need to stop eating McDonald's and stop pushing donuts in your mouth. And so I'm like, there's so many assumptions made based on what people see that you don't realize there's underlying stress that can impact your weight. There's all kinds of things that can play a role that go outside the world of nutrition. I think we've made weight loss such a myopic discussion of diet that we've lost all these other things like sleep, which has sucked for me lately because of COVID and all the stress. And I've got some personal things in my life going on. And those will always kind of be there. It's how you manage them. And I'm working on ways to manage all those things. It's such an important discussion that I'm not hearing often enough, that we have to look at the totality of a person's life and not just the food that they're putting in their mouth.
Yeah.
We not say amen, man. I absolutely
Look,
true.
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Brian, go ahead.
No, I don't want to cut intro. I just want to. I'm getting goosebumps when Jimmy's talking because he's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
One of my health coaches, Amy is one of the health coaches here. You may know her, Amy Igis, and we have Brian Wiley also. They've lost weight and maintained it for a long time. I know you've interacted with both of them, and we all have described it. We're obesity parolees. We're obesity parolees. It's not like we have figured it out. We are still figuring it out. So I want to hear about the figuring it out,
Right.
Because I got it, low carb. Yeah, I got it. You're a fasting pro. So you mentioned stress. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. And maybe you mentioned sleep. Maybe we could talk about it a little bit. So what have you figured out about you?
Yeah, for me, I have learned that the obsession about the scale is about the stupidest thing you can do. Because the scale weight really doesn't tell you the whole story. I remember interviewing many years ago now on an old podcast I used to do called Ask the Low Carb Experts. And I had Mr. Steve Finney, who's up on the wall over there. And Dr. Steve Finney, to give him his proper credentials. And so I was like, Steve, what's the deal with scale weight? He's like, Jimmy, people obsess about it, but really at any given moment, you can be plus or minus 5 pounds. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So if you step on the scale and it says 232, and then tomorrow you step on the scale and it says 236, you're basically the same weight. And yet how many people freak out about that 4-pound weight gain? And it becomes this kind of psychological demon that just sits on your shoulder all day and says, you've been bad. You need to cut the fat. See, that ketogenic diet's making you pack on the pounds. I have let go of all of that. And it doesn't mean that I don't care about my weight. I've been criticized for saying I don't care about scale weight. People are like, oh, you just don't care about your weight. Oh, the contraire. I just don't care about obsessing about it anymore. And it's a clear distinction in my mind that, yes, I'm pursuing health, which that pursuit of health should lead to weight loss. But I'm not going to sit there and just dwell on how bad I am as a person because I happen to have extra weight on the body.
Yes,
Jimmy, man, I can't. You're like this music to my ears. After my surgery, they pumped me full of, I had surgery 4 months ago. They pumped me full of fluids. They gave me steroids. I gained 17 pounds in 3 days.
Yeah.
In 3 days. And imagine if I cared about the scale. Holy crap, what a moral failure that would have been, right? So you're absolutely right. So important. Don't live by the scale.
And plus the stress that it invokes. I mean, it causes so much stress. You're like, oh my gosh, I gained half a pound. What do you do? Yeah, or this isn't working. I give up. I'm done. And then you go and eat terrible food because you're so stressed. It's a big one because, that's why I like to focus on metabolic health and the weight. Okay. It's a secondary factor.
Yeah, I call the scale the lying liar that lies because it is. And I also have talked about jokingly that we should have all LED lights across our chest that constantly shows our triglycerides, our fasting insulin, our fasting blood sugar, our HSCRP, all of these kind of key metabolic health markers. Just all right, you think my weight means something bad? Look at what's actually going on the inside. The problem is all people see visually is you've got a gut or you've got something that they think is grotesque that they need to make fun of you about. And so that's kind of been the battle for me. Pretty much my whole career online has been trying to correct that it's not just about weight. It's like what's happening metabolically on the inside and what are the factors that could be keeping that weight on that go beyond food. So you asked me about, how am I managing stress? How am I managing my sleep? I do wear this Oura ring, again, not sponsored, but I love it. And it lets me track like the various stages of my sleep and how much deep and REM. So this is one way that I do that. As far as making the sleep better, I get a cool environment. I do all the things that they say, blackout curtains. I have an infrared sauna, and that also helps with the stress. I have a hot tub. I learned to chill. Like I came off of a 6-month sabbatical from September through the end of February. And I came back March the 1st, and a week and a half later, COVID. If I knew COVID was going to come, I would have stayed on sabbatical, you guys.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's one of those things that it's a day by day, moment by moment process. Like right now, I'm in my Jimmy Rant studio. I do a daily show called Jimmy Rants. I'm in my comfort zone. This is what I like to do. I am under no stress whatsoever doing something like this. This is my jam. But if I have to work on tax stuff, or if I have a disturbing phone call from a family member about something that's going on, that adds stress. And so I think in the moment, what I have learned is when those things happen, recognize that my body's coming under stress, recognize that that's going to probably raise my blood sugar and cause me to maybe have to want to eat something. In fact, just the other day, to get to one of the stories I was going to say about COVID, I was walking through the grocery store to get some meat. And on the way back, I passed the produce section. And right there in the produce section was big old display of bananas. Now, I haven't had a banana in over 15 years. I wanted to have the banana. It's like, what is that? Like, what's going on? Now, obviously, I resisted, but it was like drawing me to it. I was calling out my name, and I'm going, what in the world? And it just reminded me that, yes, I have overcome, but no, I have not completely cured. And in a way, I'm really glad. I want those inklings to still be there to remind me from whence I came and why I don't engage in that behavior any longer.
Well, Jimmy, don't you think that's like the spiritual walk also, right? Like if we all looked on the outside what we looked like on the inside, the church would be just come as you are. Don't wait till you're perfect and then come, right? And that's what I had to struggle with too, coming out in this forum talking about low carb. It's like, okay, you're still overweight and you're talking about, I'm like, I'm on the journey. Because, the big thing you're hearing, they're like, never take advice from an overweight doctor. It's like, well, heck, that you don't know where they are in their journey. And when you judge people and not say, oh my gosh, they lost 85 pounds and they're still on the journey, right?
Well, and it also pretends like the only marker of your success in your health is your weight. That one pisses me off to no end, because it's like, okay, we're not giving any credence to lower inflammation levels. And you guys know, without inflammation, you're not going to have disease. So, okay, I have a few extra pounds on the body. And we have great studies that say it's okay to have a little extra weight on the body as long as you're metabolically healthy and some of these markers that we've been talking about are in order. And I think weight is one of those incomplete markers of health. It's a great marker as part of a totality, but as a singular marker of health, I would look at triglycerides before I'd look at weight. I'd look at fasting insulin before I'd look at weight. I'd look at any of the inflammatory markers before I would ever look at weight. Weight is just a symptom of high inflammation, a symptom of high insulin, a symptom of all these things that you really need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I want to come back. I mean, I can't agree with you more. I want to come back to, stressed out Jim, and he's there in the supermarket because I think that's valuable. And it's going to be valuable for our listeners. Now, you mentioned the banana cravings, right? You talked about that, the sugar cravings, the sweet cravings. We know in the medical literature, it's very well described. If you get poor sleep or you're under stress, okay, that your sweet cravings will go up, your general food cravings will go up. So the ways I've seen people decompose and the ways I've seen myself decompose is meal frequency increases. You just want to have another meal. right? Or you get increased sweet cravings and maybe you go to something carby. But then I've also seen, fat cravings, like, people are just, adding fats. Maybe they're turning to cheeses and nuts and dark chocolate and stuff like
Right.
that. So, and I think these are all basically symptom of the same problem. I think you can take somebody, let's take you stressed out in that supermarket and put cinder blocks in your stomach. Would that change the fact that you wanted the banana or not? If there were cinder blocks in your stomach, probably not, right? So I think people don't understand that, they look at things like bypass. They look at things like, bariatric surgery. They even look at medications. None of those are going to help in that moment. They're not going to help. And I think what you're alluding to here is, in fact, if you were any other animal, if you were a bear, if you were a dog, what would you do? You would just eat and you wouldn't even care about it, right? So what we are experiencing as people, stressed out in that supermarket, I think that's very valuable. And when other people hear that struggle, how valuable it is. They've probably come to you telling you every day, like, you saved my life. So can you talk about stressed out Jim in that supermarket? What do you notice your tendencies are? Like what you're craving, where your cravings take you, what have you learned about how, Jimmy decomposes,
For me, I realize, because I've been at this for so long, what's going on. Like that's the thing, just self-awareness of what's happening. Like, it's very easy to fall prey when you're not recognizing that you're coming under attack. And you have to view it as such. Like, as you're walking through a grocery store, and let's go out of the virtuous section of the store. Let's get the produce to the side. Banana sounds all virtuous. Let's go down the candy aisle. And let's say you see your old candy bar. Let's just say it's Three Musketeers is your jam, and you pass by this big old bag of Three Musketeers.
I grew up addicted to Three Musketeers.
Oh yeah. And so you're going, I did not know that. So there we go.
Now you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's all right.
So, and so the general pool will be to go to it. And plus, what happens is people forget we have such a positive association in our memories of these foods. Like, back in the day, for me, it was macaroni and cheese. Like, Jimmy Moore could put away some macaroni and cheese. My dad owned restaurants when I was growing up, and he had a big old buffet. And on Wednesdays, I'd get home from school at 3:30. First thing I would do is go right into the restaurant, and literally the whole plate would be piled high with macaroni and cheese. Now, did I need all that? No. But my brain was like, you're happy when you're putting that in your pie hole. So sometimes it triggers those happy memories. But I think you can create enough distance between when you had that and it was a happy memory, and now realizing the ramifications of what that did to you back then, that it gives you enough pause. But not everybody is there on their journey. So a lot of people listening to this right now, maybe they're only less than 1 year in, and they're not quite at that point where they could disconnect themselves. They have a very recent, within a year or 2 years, that they've gotten happy hormones kick in because of that thing that they now desire. So it's very difficult, but at that moment, for me personally, it's not a big deal anymore because it's the distant past. I realize the urge is pulling me, but I don't give in. Some people within like a year or two of starting keto, for example, they're going to be susceptible to that. So you just have to like realize what's going on in the moment. And maybe right now, me articulating it so clearly is like, people are like, oh my gosh, that's why I wanted to grab that honey bun the other day at the convenience store. Yep, that's exactly why.
Yeah, we've all been conditioned to that, we had the Lucky Charms, whatever, as kids watching cartoons, and we want to go back to that happy place. And right now during COVID that you brought up, it's that everyone goes back to those things, the Funyuns or whatever it was that you had when you were a kid that made you feel comforted or that you enjoyed, or you want to get back out of the stressful environment we're in. For us, it was study breaks. We're going to take a study break, get pizza. We're going to take a study break and do this. And you always associate that with relaxation or having a margarita at the end of the day, with your friends, and that you associate those things with good times. And that's the draw. It's the mental part of it.
And I tell my patients all the time, you can't unlearn the exhilaration of riding a bike. You know, you can't unlearn that, you know. And in fact, if you were a wild animal out in the woods, if you were a bear, Jimmy, you'd want to remember where those, you know, mac and cheeses are. You'd want to, well, it's not mac and cheese for the bears. It's berries, it's salmon, it's honey, right? Those bears want to ingrain those pathways, where they found it, how they can get there every year, right? So we want these reward circuits, but you know what? You're absolutely right. Those grocery stores and the food companies, they're taking advantage, right? They're attacking our instincts and we're not aware of them. So Jimmy, I can't tell you how valuable it is to hear that.
It's why I don't allows you guys. I literally, when I go in a grocery store, I turn hard right and I like hug the outer edges. Now, the problem is in my grocery store locally, when I go hard right, it's right into the bakery area. So I'm like, oh crap. But then like quickly go by that and you get to the meats and the cheeses and all the other things.
So Jimmy, I can't let you escape. No, Troy, I'm going to cut you off this time.
Yeah, go ahead.
West Coaster guys are going to
age before beauty.
Jimmy, I can't let you get out of here. There's two questions that are just burning out. I'm just going to ask one now. One is with fasting. What's your opinion now after all you've been through with prolonged fasting, intermittent fasting, time restricted eating? Do you think there's a sweet spot, or do you think we are all? I know, gosh, yes. The Complete Guide to Fasting. I know that with this some kid named Jason Fung. I heard about him somewhere.
Heard of him, yes.
But you know, what's your opinion after your experience in life? Because and the other thing I just want to make the point is, once we think anything we do, once you think you've arrived and you got the answers, you are in a bad situation. Right. We've all kind of been there. We think, oh, I got this figured out, easy, right? But really going back to the point is, you're with fasting and you haven't just stuck yourself to something and go, that's it. You've been on and that's what I love about you. You've been on a journey of knowledge. So where are you now compared to where you were 2 years ago?
Well, 2 years ago, let's back up even further than that, because I wrote this book with Jason 4 years ago, and it was about 5 years ago that I met Jason at a conference. It was the big Tim Noakes conference. I was one of the speakers in 2015 at the big low carb conference that he had there in Cape Town, South Africa. It's where I met Jason for the first time. And like, I always kind of knew about intermittent fasting and that there were benefits there. I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. I'm like, why do I need to like not eat food when I can eat ketogenic, I can eat low carb and get all these benefits? And I wasn't like understanding autophagy and some of the other benefits that you get. And so when it started, I was like, okay, I can intermittent fast pretty easily, happens spontaneously when you eat keto, probably 16 to 18, sometimes 24 hours, but really not much more than that. Then that was my basic knowledge. Then I'm hearing Jason talk about, well, you can push it a little bit longer and see how you do. And so I start fasting for 42 hours. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Fat adapted state, feeling good, energetic. All right, now let's try 72 hours. And I think people like to make fasting look like you're like starving yourself and you just got to jump right to 100 days right away. And it's like, no, like work your way up. Like you don't pop wheelies on a bicycle the first time you ride it. You pop wheelies after you ride, fall off, scrape your knee, wah, ride, fall off, scrape your knee, wah. And it's like you go through this process of the pain that can be temporary because you're going through something new, but then each time it extends more and more and more. And so for me, that enabled me to do 21 days, 3 different occasions. And so I've done some pretty super long fasts. And I've since found out, because I have the longevity gene for fasting. What is that one? LP little a. I was told if you have an elevated LP little a, lipoprotein little a, that means you are going to be the one in the tribe that will survive the longest. You can fast the best. So I tend to have a higher lipoprotein little a, and I'm like, okay, well, I can do these longer fasts. Wasn't totally without pain, but it was doable, and I did 3 of those. But what I found, Brian, to your question here, is that it's a little bit overkill. I find that the benefits that I get pretty much cap out at 7 days. And after the 7th day, it's almost the law of diminishing returns. It's not that you're doing some harm or anything, but you're definitely not getting any added benefit. And I'm thinking, if you're going to fast, you want the best bang for your buck. And so let's say I fast 7 days this week. I can fast 7 more days, maybe in the next 6 weeks. Whereas if I fasted for 21 days, I probably don't want to fast again for another 3 to 4 months. So I think the frequency of being able to fast again, once again, getting the autophagy benefits and all the other benefits, it just makes 7 days, like this 5 to 7 days, kind of a sweet spot, just based on the many times that I fasted now.
Man, that's awesome. And then as far as, does it get harder and harder to fast for you now if once you go back to eating, or do you feel like after you fast for 21 days, do you start getting into bad habits, or do you think that's a reset point for you to get
Oh, dude,
on track?
it's the opposite. Everybody thinks when you finish a long fast, you're going to be eating everything house and home. No, it's actually exactly the opposite. Like literally, you're allowed to eat again. And of course, you gently break it. We tell you how in the book. So you just gently break it. Food. But once you kind of get back eating again, a funny thing happens. You want to start fasting again. It's amazing. The day after ending a fast, you broke your fast, let's say at 7 p.m. at night. You had your meal, You go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, not really hungry. You get to about 2, 3 in the afternoon, you're like, I'm not hungry. It's almost as if your body's like, all right, we know what you're doing here. We got you, bro. We know you gave us a little bit of food last night, but we got this. We're used to not eating. We know that this is what you're trying to do. So your body very quickly adapts to that not eating. You almost have to, and I'm not recommending this, but you almost have to force yourself to eat because your body has become so conditioned, especially with the 21-day one, so conditioned with not eating that you almost have to remind your body, oh yeah, this is a good thing. I'm giving you like basic building blocks, amino acids, fatty acids, all these things that we need. But the body has become adapted to the not eating, that when you start eating again, you're not eating out of house and home. You almost have to like set a reminder on your phone, hey dude, eat something.
Do you think after that 21-day fast, your body kind of goes into this panic mode a little bit, and that the weight becomes an issue of maybe your metabolic rate dropping down? Have you noticed that with your prolonged fast? And that's always been my question. Like, am I better off doing a 2-day fast here and a 3-day fast there and separate, like what you're talking about? I think that may be a better approach possibly.
Well, and that's why I'm not a fan of the 21 anymore. So I think 5 to 7 days is that sweet spot. No, I do not think you have a lowering of your metabolic rate if you're fasting for 5 to 7 days. In fact, a lot of the studies that Dr. Fung and I talked about in our book was you actually get a boosting of your metabolic rate by as much as 12%. And so when you do come back to eating again, you can probably have a little more calories than you did even pre-fast. And so this is the exciting part, that fasting, people want to make it something that it's not. Under eating calories, absolutely. You're going to slow down your metabolic rate. You're going to have all these issues. And it's obviously a very bad thing that if you're going to have 400 or 500 calories, it's far better to have 0 than 400 to 500. So when you have 0, the body kind of adapts to that. And then when you start eating again, you're not going to get near the slowing down of the metabolism. Now, maybe at 21 days you do, Brian, to your point, that probably is a good reason not to do it for that long unless you have significant metabolic derangement that it could be healed, and start that healing process by doing a longer one. But I think for most people, and let's make this point clear too, most people don't need to fast longer than intermittent anyway. Like if you're relatively healthy and you're doing great, unless you're just trying to get autophagy benefits, go about 72 hours, a couple times a year, and you got your autophagy. For people that are generally healthy, intermittent fasting is going to be okay. It's these people that have extra weight on the body, hyperinsulinemia, maybe high triglycerides, all these things that could be improved by going a period of time without eating. Those are the people that longer fasting is designed for.
Yeah, that's I 100% agree. Most people, we tell them, you can get away with time restriction only, or just decreasing that meal frequency. But there are some, diabetics, some with very high hyperinsulinemia.
Right.
I absolutely agree that could benefit. And particularly I find, if we can get somebody moving, I'd always like the benefit of exercise after they're fat adapted and after their meal frequency is down. But if somebody's immobile, you will never get you can't get the benefits of exercise, right? So you need another way to drop your insulin, to become more insulin sensitive. You need another way to handle it. And I've found extended fast useful, particularly in like type 1.5 diabetes and people who can't really do, exercise, right? They have no other way to get some of those benefits you talked about. Do you think you talked about your body stopping having the inclination to eat when you're fasting, when you're doing a prolonged fast? Do you think that's ketones? Do you think that's a pragmatic issue? Like there's the practice of noticing your hunger and saying, I'm not going to eat. And then do you think it's a combination of all these? Do you think that it's a Pavlovian type, habit that's being broken? Or do you think it's, what are your thoughts about that? How do you get to, I'm starving all the time, hungry all the time, or, pretty hungry to, wow, I can't even imagine eating right now?
I think fasting turns on a type of fat burning that we just don't fully comprehend and understand yet. Obviously, low carb diets, tap into that stored body fat. That's the whole mechanism of why it works. But I think when you fast, it's almost like keto on acid, like speeding up, getting into those fat stores. It's why some people see an elevation in their blood sugar when they're in the midst of a fast. They're not realizing deep within that fat storage, especially in your belly, is like sugar. And so that's why your blood sugar goes up. If you're transiently testing your blood sugar while you're fasting, some people freak out. They see a 126. Oh my God, I'm not eating anything. Celebrate, because you're losing out fat that's been binding up all these things in your body. Fat is there for a reason. It's binding up things that could harm you. And so people forget about that. So when you end a fast, to your question, I think what happens is your body's just still in that, all right, we're burning body fat, we're burning it. And so I think you kind of get that joyride of still, it's almost like you're not pedaling anymore on the bicycle, to keep that analogy going, and you're just floating. You're just allowing the propulsion that got you to the point you are. And now you're just like gliding. And that's what you do when you end a fast. You're kind of gliding. It's why you're no longer hungry anymore. It's why you're able to feel, I don't really have to eat. And it's a weird feeling when people get that. They're like, I'm not hungry. Like, do I have to eat? I just ended my fast, but I really don't want to. And I always tell people, make sure you have a little something, because you don't want your body to think you're fasting again, or worse yet, you don't want your body to under-eat calories, because then you start to reverse all the good things that you did during the fast.
Yeah, I think that is so interesting, because a lot of us are afraid. There's a fear in America of being hungry, right? People are like, if I don't eat enough, I'm going to be hungry. Okay, you won't die just from being hungry for an hour if you're away from your dinner plate. So yeah, and I think that's a point. I knew that when I was in high school. I played football and I wrestled, so I'd have to lose 40 pounds in between seasons. And we would starve ourselves and work out and spit and go in the sauna, do all this crazy, because it was about you had to weigh in, you had to make weight. But then after that, we'd bring a bunch of chicken and all this food, and then you sit there and take one bite, and you can't eat it. You just can't eat. Your body's saying, I don't want that. I just can't do it. So it's kind of crazy. The fasting does the opposite of what people think. Plus energy goes up and focus and all this stuff. That's why spiritually people have fasted for thousands of years for that reason. But now we're so out of fasting shape, the church says, okay, Monday everyone's fasting. You're eating Fritos on Sunday, and then Monday you're going to start this fast, and it's a torture. It's a penance you're doing rather than truly seeking, right?
Yeah, and it's so funny because the people that like load up on food before a fast, I'm like, are you trying to make day one harder than it needs to be? Like, it's just the keto people. I'm like, people, please. Or even some keto people, and I'm not kidding you, some low carb people, if that's you, sorry, but I'm not sorry. They'll eat junk food the day before they start a fast. Well, I'm going to burn it off. It's not going to really have any consequences. I'm like, oh, day one's going to be so torturous on you. It really is. Or those people that say, well, I blew it during the holidays. I'm trying to get back on course. In order to get back into a low carb keto state, should I fast first? And I'm always like, if you're sadistic and you like pain, like get keto adapted, get well keto adapted, 2 to 4 weeks, really get good ketone production. Then after you're spontaneously intermittent fasting, maybe then try an extended fast of 5 to 7 days. It's so funny. People are, well, I want to speed up ketosis. I'm like, No, like, unless you just like being hungry, because you will be hungry if you go straight from a carb binge into a all-out fast.
Yeah, as I say, I'm going to be sedentary the whole time. Monday, I'm going to run a marathon. Then I'll start walking after that, right? You walk first, and then you build up, and then you run the marathon down the road. Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice, Jimmy. Fro, you get one question, then I have another question before Jimmy leaves, man. We're going to keep him as every second we can.
Yeah. So, we talked about struggles with stress. We talked about, kind of how fasting has kind of helped you overcome some roadblocks. Any other key nuggets that you've learned about your own self, like later in your journey? I know you've been doing this now 15 years, but things that, for me, the stress management has been key. Distraction sometimes is so key for me. It's like, it's like if I get out of my house, I have no desire to eat. But if I stay in my house, it's like, and I'm watching my kids eat eggs and bacon for breakfast. Oh my God. So I don't know. Those are my own things, but just to give you an example, but any major things you've learned about yourself and that have helped you kind of and helped your relationship with food?
Do you have all day? Because I could really go into the weeds with a lot of things.
Yeah, I'll take it all. We'll take it all.
Let me go to non-food things just for a moment that are related to food. I think if people aren't measuring heart rate variability, you need to right away. And they make this little strap you can put around your chest, and it shows whether you're in a sympathetic state or parasympathetic state. And the objective is not to go too far one way or the other, but to be like right in the middle between sympathetic, very stressed, parasympathetic, very chill. And I don't think enough people give this credence. And especially on those days when you're feeling those really heavy carb cravings, strap that bad boy on, you get the reading in a few seconds on your phone, and then you're like, oh, well, no wonder. So then you start adding in meditation and you start to relax and do these relaxation types of things, and then watch what happens to that carb craving. So that's one thing that's been really helpful to me. The Oura also does heart rate variability while you're sleeping, which has been helpful too, to kind of see that data. So that's been a big game changer for me. Do either of you use that with your patients?
I honestly don't yet, but now I am. I've been hearing about that, and I just haven't really dove into that.
We track it on the Apple Health. Yeah, we track heart rate variability on the Apple Health. So if they get an Apple iWatch, we look at that, but not an individualistic approach. In fact, actually, the one area that we do look at that is in some of our athletes. To look at their conditioning, particularly their conditioning. But it's interesting things you've brought up.
Yeah, I'll be researching that and learning more, because I've heard that a few times, and I haven't really tracked it my patients yet, but I'll be able to, because I'm going to be like Tro next week. I'll be able to monitor all that stuff. So Jimmy, I'm not going to let you escape here. What's your opinion on, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had one more. That was just one. You asked for.
Yeah,
oh, geez.
Listen,
Sorry, man.
Brian,
I got excited.
Brian,
I get so excited.
We got to let him talk. No,
I know. I'll shut up. Yeah, go, Jimmy. Go.
John Lemansky is one of your colleagues. He's a medical doctor friend. I'm sure you guys know. He's the expert to talk to about HRV if you want to learn more. But
we'll get him on.
Yeah. So, so the other one that's really critical, that when I first started the Atkins Diet in 2004, I was all about walking on a treadmill and just walking, and that's good enough for exercise. Maybe a little bit of elliptical, that's good enough for exercise. I have learned, and especially as I've gotten older, I'm 48 now, I want to be stronger, and the strength training is where it's at. And I never put the value in that, because I bought into the whole nonsense, going back to the scale thing again. Oh, I don't want to put on weight because that's going to be unhealthy. So if that's you, if you're one of those people listening to this and you kind of go, well, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to bulk up. Number one, you won't. It's a lot harder than you think it is. But even if you do put on muscle weight, that's a good thing. And especially as you get older, and you guys know, having your older patients, you want them to be strong. You want their bones to be strong. And the only way you do that is with resistance training. And I'll tell you what I have and what I did in recent years. A couple of years ago, I got me a big old tractor tire. And it's out there in the yard right now. And I've been flipping 200-pound tractor tire and I'll do these interval sets. So I'm getting a cardio workout by doing it, fast. I do about 10 flips, rest for about a minute, 10 flips back, rest for a minute, and kind of replicate that 8 different rounds. And man, oh man, you talk about getting your heart rate up, you talk about, increasing your strength. And at the end of it, and it's not a long workout, we're talking 10 to 15 minutes at the most, just a couple times a week, 2-3 times a week. And it is so incredible. Like, I have found such strength gains just from doing that one little bit of exercise. And people devalue small changes making a big difference. That was a small change that I know as I get into my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s is going to help me live longer and have a better quality of life as I get older.
I can't agree with you. We call it high intensity interval training, which combines that aerobic and anaerobic exercise, right? So that's so key, and resistance training are so key. If you're looking for a box solution, I actually think Orange Theory is pretty good. Most martial arts are also pretty good. They kind of get a good combination of both of those. So those are really good. Or just you can follow somebody like Jerry Textera or and
Ben.
and do
Dr.
his
Ben.
Yeah, Ben Bakikio. Oh my God!
I got Tri-System Nutrition. We're going to be hooking up with those guys, getting our patients. It's a 20-minute workout where people could just kill it, do full body workout, and so I'm excited about that stuff because that's the missing piece that I think in the low carb community we said, oh, it's just about diet, not exercise. Well, it's both.
That's the way to get insulin sensitivity. You want to decrease that insulin. Look, I have athletes here that are on high carb diets, okay, that have insulins of 3. Okay, that have insulins of 3. So and they're on I should say moderate carb diets. Nobody here is on a high carb diet, but I'd say higher carb than you'd imagine. They're periodizing carbs, high carbs, very, very low insulin. So I think exercise is such a key component to decrease those triglycerides, decrease insulin. It is very undervalued, and we consider it the 4th lever. I generally like it before fasting. Don't kill me, Jimmy. Don't kill me.
I love it.
So we like to push people into that exercise before fasting, and then we'll add fasting. That doesn't work.
So what are the 4? Go.
Which one? Sorry, I didn't hear it.
What are the 4? You said you push exercise before fasting. Fasting would be 4th. What are the 4?
So we carb restriction, meal frequency restriction, okay, evaluating added fats, okay, then exercise, right,
okay.
And then extended fast. That's our general approach.
So your number 2 on the reducing meal frequency is a form of fasting.
Yeah. So I meant extended fast.
Can't get anything by Jimmy, Trogue. What are you?
Yeah, I know. He's like,
dude.
We got the fasting king on here. So listen. So
you got any more? You got any more, Jimmy?
Yeah.
No. I want to hear your question now, Brian.
Here's the controversy Tro and I stepped into about, gosh, maybe it's 2 years ago now. Really? Do you think it's food addiction? Do you think it's stress that we go back to our bad ways? What do you think is a lot of people say there's no such thing as food addiction. I say, in my opinion, BS. I would like to hear from the master here. What do you think? Is this truly an addiction that we need to manage as an addiction? Or do you think it's habits? Or what do you think makes us fall off the wagon after someone, we just had Ken Armstrong, one of the nicest guys on earth, and he lost, tons of weight, and then he gained back 60 pounds because he had one cookie. It wasn't because he was stressed. It wasn't because he didn't have social support. It wasn't because he didn't like himself. But he said, for him, it was a pure addiction. I'm pretty convinced. And some of us, where are you on the spectrum of all this stuff?
Do we ever ask a crack cocaine addict who has overcome his addiction whether he still has an addiction or not?
Exactly.
No, because he still has the addiction. Is able to keep it at bay. Have we ever asked an alcoholic, do you still have your alcohol addiction? Do you still have that? Of course you do. And so why do we treat food any differently? I remember I was contacted. They wanted me to be on a national television show. I forget what it was, but it was one of the big talk shows, daytime talk shows. They wanted me to come on and be the person who advocated that food addiction is not a real thing. I'm like, it is a real thing. What are you talking about? Like, they wanted me to take the position that it wasn't. I'm like, have you looked at my work? Like, I think food addiction is probably the biggest reason why we have an obesity epidemic. And I would even like refine it even more. I don't think it's just food addiction. I think it's the highly palatable, crappy garbage food addiction, because Jimmy Moore did not get fat eating broccoli and cauliflower and steaks. No, that's all food that I maybe could have eaten in excess of energy. No, what got me fat was Ding Dong, Ho-Ho's, Coca-Cola, Doritos, and all the rest. And so absolutely, like, you want to know what the most addictive substance in America is right now? It ain't crack cocaine.
Pizza.
It ain't alcohol.
It's pizza.
It's crap, garbage. And if we can't get that through our brains, it's why the 2020 dietary guidelines, they have to get it. I'm on a rant mode. I'm in Jimmy rant.
Yeah, you rant, Jimmy, man.
No,
you
we
rant.
like to hear it.
We're
Keep
all
going.
we're with you. It's like being at the revival meeting here now.
Can I get it?
Yeah.
If the 2020 dietary guidelines does not come out and just clearly say, it won't, but they should clearly say, stop eating crap, start eating real food, go.
Yeah, it's totally controversial, right? To say eat real
Yeah,
food. It's
yeah,
unbelievable to me. As if a Doritos deficiency syndrome is going to happen, right? When people start eating real food. I mean, it is absolute insanity to me. And I hear it all the time. Food's not addictive. Yeah, true. We see a lot of people that are well say there's no such thing. It's like those of us who studied or have dealt with it in our lives say, yeah, it's real. Just like, and it's the same thing, you know, because we get pigeonholed, say you guys are so radical in your views. Like, look, if I have a friend who's an alcoholic, I would say, yeah, just drink alcohol in moderation. They don't have control over it. No. They just don't. So you don't say, yeah, have it in moderation. If you're the person who has one cookie and you go off the rail and gain 60 pounds, you can't, your brain gets messed up, you know?
I had a patient very recently who's done excellent, long-time ketoer, came to me for coaching and support and kind of fine-tuning. And he'd done well. He lost like 10, 15 pounds. And then he's like, you know what? It's strawberry season here in this area. And he hasn't had sweet berries, you know, ripe sweet berries in a long time. And he ate the sweet berries and he told me what happened next. He's saying, it's just like I went into this automatic mode. I went to, I don't know, remember, Kind bars and peanut butter and ice cream and all sorts of things. And I asked him, do you think those strawberries are healthy? You know? And he said, probably not for me. Right? Probably not for me. And I thought to myself, look, it's very important for every single person to pay attention to their own triggers. I was at my parents' house the other day. I ate 1.5 pounds of steak. I had one piece of watermelon. It was like that feeling of fullness was gone.
See,
right?
This
So
is part of this discussion. In my book, Keto Clarity, Dr. Eric Westman and I put in the book, fruit is nature's candy. And of course, people are always like, well, the sugar in fruit is natural. I said, yeah, it will naturally raise your blood sugar and your insulin. You know, and so we kind of like, we try to forgive the choices that we make. And in the case of your patient, Tro, when you were saying they started with the berries and then it went to the Kind bar, then it went off the rails. Do you see how they progressed in the healthy and then it became this junk food binge? And I think we do that to ourselves. Well, strawberries, they're innocuous. They're from God. God wouldn't make these if they weren't meant for us to eat. And so, yes, they're sweet, but I can I want this Kind bar. It's a Kind bar. And so the Kind bar is so healthy for you. And so you eat that, oh, crap, now I want the ice cream. And you're off the rails because you have Ben and Jerry's in your mouth.
Yeah, you know, just to be clear that, you know, we talk about how processed foods have been designed to be hyperpalatable and eaten. Well, just so we all know, those strawberries have been designed by evolution to be eaten by animals and have that seed spread. So it's called, you know, zoophoria, I think is the name of it. How there's an adaptive evolutionary quality to making a fruit very tasty, so an animal will eat it and spread its seed. So it's been processed by evolution. So I enjoy fruit. I actually think fruit is healthy, okay, but I still recognize that it can certainly be a trigger to eat more, right? I've never seen a wild animal take one berry and say, you know what, I'm going to intermittent fast now. I haven't seen a squirrel eat an acorn or a nut and then just say, you know what, it's my, you know, I see them hoarding them, stuffing their faces like, like crack addicts. That's what
Well,
I see.
yeah.
So if we can acknowledge that, and a lot of times I feel the same way about dairy. I was asking myself, why is it I have such a hard time? It's low carb. Why shouldn't I like cheese and dairy and all these things? I was trying to think to myself, what is it about dairy I don't like? I don't like it because I want to eat more of it. I don't like it because I want to eat more of it. And that, and if you look at crafted by evolution to make a mammal eat more and grow. Right? So yeah, it's not a processed food. And I acknowledge full fat dairy is healthy. You look at the literature, it's right there. It's right there. Full fat dairy, full fat yogurt is healthy, associated with better outcomes, just like fruit is, right? Associated with better outcomes. But I don't like them because they make me want to eat more. What do you think, Jimmy?
Yeah, and going back to the banana story earlier, the reason I was able to resist is that very thing you were just talking about a moment ago of, I knew if I ate one, I would eat three. And I knew if I ate three, an hour later, I would be wanting to eat the whole grocery store down. And so kind of knowing your triggers and knowing yourself, to kind of wrap up what we're talking about here, that's so key in this. Like, we could just talk about, well, just eat low carb and all your woes go away. Yeah, screw that. That's not true. That doesn't always come out, in the end. You have to be mindful. And I think having this mindfulness, living your life eyes wide open, knowing these things that will trigger you is so key. And I love it that you can have fruit. I hate you, but I can't.
No, it's a struggle. It is a struggle for me. So I tell you, I love it. I love it. But I think that's down a pound of strawberries, no problem.
And Jimmy, you've converted more to carnivore also, right? Because I think that is one of those things people have success because it's no longer an option. You're not looking for that sweet taste. And I think the longer you're away from that sweet taste, the better off you do.
Right. Yeah, I have 19 backyard chickens, and I had me a big old omelet this morning made with those beautiful. In fact, I had a double yolker this morning. It was like, oh, yes.
Yeah. That's like you won the lottery,
awesome,
I know,
when
right?
you get the double yolk. Yeah.
Man, Jimmy, I just really want to thank you for coming on. You've really, I've learned a ton from you over time. You and Jason, of course, have been huge influences. And we did, I'll thank Fat Fiction. I'm so glad I did that movie because you and I met on the panel after that. I was always intimidated, being like, oh, Jimmy Moore, oh my gosh. Yeah. So, it was awesome. You reached out and you were very kind and said, hey, I would love to come on the podcast. And then I thought, how about, will Jason get upset? And Jason's cool too. I think you guys are all cool. But, I think it's one of those things you go, gosh, you're a nice guy. And you've been through the struggles and you've done so much. And I think, I've always respected that you said, look, here's where I'm at. I'm not perfect. I'm working on this thing. And I think we all have to be on that road. I think that is very important. The other thing, what we're talking about is like, one thing, Rob Zivas has been a huge influence on me, one of my favorite guys. And he says, just think about those donuts. If you have a donut addiction, just think you're about to eat your donut, you drop it, it lands in a pile of dog crap, right? Are you going to pick it up and eat it? No, you see it for what it is.
Well, you might break off.
Yeah, you just some of us might just break up that one. Oh, that didn't hit very hard. Now during COVID, right? Yeah. COVID ended the 5-second rule. It's like, okay, hit the ground. I'm not touching. I'm not taking it. Right. So but really, I want to commend you on all you've done and how many lives and people you've influenced over time, including us. And just being a voice of reason and taking the bullets and all that way before I was even thinking about this stuff. I would listen to you a lot of times on hikes and do it. So I love that now when people say, hey, I'm out working on the tractor, listen to the podcast. I just love that people are living their lives and made us a part of their life that we can help. And you're a big part of that.
Well, and the fun part, thank you. The fun part is when you go to other countries. I remember the first time I went to Australia to speak, and it was like 300 people in the audience. It was the first time I'd ever given a talk. This was way back 2012. And they're like, I asked the audience, okay, how many of you have heard the Live and La Vida low carb show? And like 3/4 of the audience raised their hands. And I'm going, what? Like, you don't even realize. So guys, keep doing your thing. Don't get overly consumed by you're not qualified to talk about this and da-da-da. Just speak. And of course, you come at it from more of a medical perspective than I do. I think we all have our contributions in this community that's helping people. And at the end of the day, we should all be about that.
Amen. Definitely.
Absolutely.
When we go to conferences now, You know, even in the conventional medicine, I went to obesity conference last November, and we'll see if we'll have similar conferences like that now post COVID. But you know, I had doctors coming to me like, thank Brian, thank you, you know, thank Jason, right? Like for doing this. And it's like, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, yourself, Jason Fung, Dr. Eric Westman, people you've worked with, people you've wrote books with, people you've interviewed. So we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate everything you've done. And it's just been an honor to have you here and talk with you.
Yeah. So Jimmy, if anyone's been under a rock, where do they find you? What's your best way to get people in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. LLVLC.com is livinlavitalow-carb.com. Has like all my podcasts. And then I do this daily show right here. Jimmy Rants is what it's called. JimmyRants.com as well. Mix it up between some nutrition stuff, some cultural stuff, just have a good time. And I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to help any way that we can. And there's nothing special about Jimmy Moore. I just am consistent and persistent, and just try shutting me up.
Yeah, I think being opinionated and say what you say and go, look, here's what I'm saying, and being bold in that. I think these days we're all afraid to say certain things. I think when you're able to be bold and say, okay, some people may not like it, but it's truth. At least it's our truth, the way we see things. And I think it's very important that you know, we all have to get our feathers ruffled at some point and say, okay, is what I'm doing working or not? And you have to reassess. You can't just say, okay, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life, and that's it, right? And that's what I respect about you.
If it makes you think, Brian, then I've done my job.
Tro, you want to close this, man?
No, look, yes and no. I don't want to close this because it's
I know
such an awesome conversation.
You're always invited back, man. Yeah, you're always invited
the
back.
Master. Yeah, Jimmy can close us, I think.
All right, man.
You've been listening to the Low Carb MD podcast. Join us next week for an exciting episode. We'll see you then.
We'll see you then. Hey, everyone,
Jimmy,
thank you. Jimmy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I think we covered every topic. I don't know if we could do a summary, Tro, because everything was important here. So it's nice to have the master on that. This is really cool. So, Jimmy, thanks again.
Thank you, guys.